You asked a question there, which is you posed a question which many people have tried to answer. You gave the answer from 30 years ago about, why do we sleep? And it dawned on me as you said that I've never asked myself that question. I've never even pondered the thought of why I sleep. I mean, I know what happens when I sleep, but do I know why my body can't just find another way? Why can't my body stay awake for the 24 hours? I know some animals, they sleep half their brain and then the other half kind of has a nap and whatever. Why do we sleep?
It's a puzzling question because when you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, it makes no sense whatsoever. Sleep is utterly idiotic because when you're sleeping, firstly, you're not finding a mate, you're not reproducing, you're not foraging for food, you're not caring for your young, and worst of all, you're vulnerable to predation. Now, on any one of those grounds, but especially all of them as a collective, sleep should have been strongly selected against during the course of evolution. But from best we can tell, sleep evolved with life itself on this planet, and it has fought its way through heroically every step along the evolutionary path. And what that has told us is that sleep must be essential at the most basic of biological levels. And now we understand that Mother Nature didn't make a spectacular blunder with this thing called sleep. Sleep, for example, will restock the weaponry in your immune arsenal, and it will make you a more immune sensitive individual. So you're more immune robust when you wake up. We also know that it regulates your blood sugar levels. It controls your appetite hormones. It also regulates your sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen. Sleep upstairs within the brain will fixate memories and help you learn and remember. Sleep will de-escalate anxiety. It will reduce your emotional difficulties and traumas. Sleep will actually cleanse away the Alzheimer's toxic proteins that build up in the brain. The list is endless. These are all of the reasons that we need to sleep.
But why can't I just do what those animals do where half of their brain falls asleep and the other half of the brain stays awake? Is that at all linked to the fact that we live in tribes? So we are essentially, although we're, there might be 10 people in a tribe, we're all 10% of the tribe, so we can rest at different times and kind of cover each other's backs? Or
Gosh, yeah. So actually there are two nested, very insightful questions there. The first is this notion of what you're describing, which is what we call unihemispheric sleep, which is just a fancy way of saying you can sleep with one half of your brain and the other half is wide awake. Now, there are only a few species that can do this. For example, aquatic mammals, dolphins are a great example. We can place actually electrodes on their heads, and you can see that one half of their brain will be fast asleep. It will be in deep, deep non-REM sleep. The other half of the brain will be frenetic, wide awake. And in part for them, the reason is because they need to maintain aquatic mobility. They need to keep surfacing for air. Otherwise, that's not going to be a good outcome. We also know that birds or many avian species will have unihemispheric sleep. And you can actually see this. There's some great YouTube videos online where they will film one half of the side of the bird's face and the eye is closed. And what it means is that the other half of the brain, because the brain is actually, the left half controls the right side controls the left side. So that left side is now fast asleep, which is the right eye closed. And then you kind of pan around and all of a sudden the other eye is wide awake and it's clearly looking about. Now, this is obviously not for aquatic surfacing to gain air. This is for a different reason. What happens is that in a flock, a bunch of birds will all land on a branch. Now, all of the folks in the middle, they get to sleep with both halves of their brain. They can sleep with both halves or just one half. All of the folks in the middle, they get to sleep with both halves. The unfortunate girl or guy who sort of lands at the end, the far end, they will actually sleep with one half of their brain. So one half of the flock, the entire flock, has one eye, 180 degrees of sort of half panoramic view, out. The other bird on the other end will have the other half of the brain asleep, with the other eye awake, giving the other 180-degree view of protection vision. And therefore, the entire tribe has a 360-degree assessment. Now, you would think, in fairness, that once those guys or girls at the end have done their duty, they get to move into the middle and they get to sleep with both halves. No, that's not what happens. What they will do after a while is that they will stand up, they will turn around 180 degrees, sit back down, and switch the other sides of the brain. Wow. So to just be clear, the complexity of wiring and architecture that has to happen for one half of the brain to be deep in sleep and the other half to be wide awake is astronomically hard. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to create that wiring. What that tells me is that if sleep was dispensable, if it was negotiable, then Mother Nature would have just found a different way for us to get all of these brain and body benefits and not gone to all of the evolutionary trouble of figuring out this fancy wiring for half-brain sleep. In other words, you just can't get away from sleep. You have to sleep. But your second question, I think, is even more fascinating, which is us as a tribe, because we are a tribe species. Now, there is something else that we call your chronotype. Are you a morning type, evening type, or somewhere in between? And by the way, you don't get to decide. It's not your choice. You know, this notion of these go-getter type A's who say everyone has to be awake at 5 a.m. You know, you go to the gym, you blast out a workout for an hour and you're at the desk by 6 a.m. You have no choice. If you're an evening type, you're an evening type. It's hard-coded. We know that right now there's at least 22 different genes that dictate what you are, morning type, evening type, or somewhere in between. And it's about a third split across the population. Why is it a split? Why are we nicely spread out across our chronotypes? For exactly the reason you described. Because when we're in a tribe, if we all sleep at the same time, we're all vulnerable for 8 hours. But if you were to insert some genetic variability into when people have a desire to sleep, you've got the morning types who maybe go to bed at 9 p.m. and are waking up, let's say, at 5 a.m. And then you've got all of the extreme evening types who are going to bed at 2 a.m. and waking up at maybe 11 or midday. So that way, everyone gets their 8 hours of sleep, but the entire tribe, the nucleus of this group of Homo sapiens themselves, is only vulnerable for maybe just 2 or 3 hours. So it's a clever solution that Mother Nature has come up with to say everyone gets their 8 hours, but as a species, you're only going to be vulnerable for 2 to 3 hours max, when everyone, at least as a collective, is sleeping. Absolute genius.